Introduce House Majority Leader Ryan Winkler. We're going to give him a few minutes to speak, and then we're going to just kind of open it up for some Q&A. So if you don't know, DFL House Majority Leader Ryan Winkler, he was been in the House for a while, and he carried the full legalization bill in 2020 and then again in 2021, which was passed off the House floor in May of 2021. And I'm going to turn it over to him, and then we'll go to Q&A.
All right. Thank you, Maren. Thank you to the Hemp Growers Co-op and to all of you who have been involved in the legalization effort for many years. This is a time of exciting change, I think, right now on cannabis, on hemp, on THC-derived Delta-9, on racial justice, criminal justice reform, all the elements that go into cannabis legalization we have made some good progress on. And the reason that's happening is because so many advocates for so long have been keeping that torch lit. They have been keeping cannabis at the forefront. We have worked towards legalization for many decades and addressing the fundamental injustice that prohibition of cannabis has visited on not just our country as a whole, but especially on communities of color. And the way that we've seen so many people's entry into the criminal justice system be through cannabis is something that we have to address very seriously when we look at legalization. So we passed a comprehensive bill in the Minnesota House in 2021 to legalize cannabis for adult use, for a robust regulatory structure, to make sure that we are educating youth properly about the effect of cannabis consumption on young minds, working with law enforcement to address concerns about driving under the influence, making sure that we were investing money back into the communities most adversely affected by the war on drugs, and making sure that Minnesota businesses are at the forefront of making profits and being the winners in the legalization effort rather than big multi-state operators. So we have a comprehensive approach to cannabis legalization. There's a lot that we can do, a lot we can talk about. But the big victory that we had this year was to change the laws related to hemp-derived THC for sale in food and beverages. Minnesota is unique right now. We essentially have legalized 3-2 cannabis in Minnesota. No other state has done it this way. The future of cannabis consumption in the marketplace is likely in food and beverage. So there is a possibility that Minnesota hemp growers, Minnesota processors, Minnesota product developers and retailers are going to be at the forefront of cannabis nationally because of the way we created this regulatory structure in Minnesota. So there's real business opportunity, there is real opportunity to address racial justice and criminal justice reform, and we are not done. We have a long ways to go still on cannabis legalization. But this step forward could create a unique opportunity for Minnesota business to be at the forefront of developing new models that can help us grow nationally.
Thank you, Ryan. And I would just like to say for the record, as someone who worked on the edibles bill, it wasn't an accident. It wasn't an accident. Everybody knew what was going on. So we're going to jump into some Q&A, and I have the first question, and it's a pretty easy one. You kind of covered it already, but it's, why do you think Minnesota is ready for full legalization?
Well, Minnesota voters are ready for full legalization. Minnesota consumers are ready for full legalization. Minnesota advocates have been ready for full legalization for a long time. When we passed this new law related to THC edibles and beverages, the commentary I had from my Republican colleagues in the House of Representatives after it passed, they were asked, would you roll it back if Republicans won the majority? And they said, are you crazy? We know where the public is on this. Republicans know what's popular on cannabis legalization. They know the public supports it. They know that there's a great public policy, a racial justice, a criminal justice reform element of legalization, but they do not want to be the leaders. Minnesota citizens want to make this happen, and we have to have the political dynamism and creativity and forethought to figure out how to do it, but the public is absolutely ready.
Awesome. I'm going to turn it over to the crowd. Bryant, can you holler loud and I'll repeat it? What is the most important thing Minnesota should consider when legalizing cannabis?
I think the most important thing that Minnesota needs to consider for full legalization is making sure that we are doing it in a way that serves the people of Minnesota first, and not just serving the needs of people who've created big companies across the country and are going to make a lot of money. So we did 15 town halls across Minnesota. We were in rural communities, we were in urban communities, we were in suburban communities, north, south, east, west. We talked to people all over the state, and their voice was very consistent. They said that we need to make this a industry that will be served by Minnesota businesses and small businesses. They want a craft type industry, not a corporate type industry in Minnesota. They want robust regulatory protections. They want to make sure that people who can benefit from cannabis consumption for health have access. But the biggest thing that we heard everywhere we went was the need to address racial justice in legalization. And that it didn't matter. I was a little surprised. It didn't matter which part of the state we were in. Everyone was aware the way that our cannabis laws have been enforced in a discriminatory manner that has been deliberately targeted at certain communities to suppress the activities in that community and the ability to move ahead. And if we are not addressing the criminal justice reform and racial justice element of cannabis legalization, we will not be listening to the voices of Minnesotans. And I think that absolutely has to be at the forefront.
Questions? Katrina? Ryan, why do you support legalization?
Well, confession, I don't support it because I'm a particularly avid user of cannabis and never really have been. I support it because prohibition of cannabis has led to far more harm than cannabis itself has led to. So we talked a little bit about the way our laws are enforced in a discriminatory manner. We've talked about a little bit about how legitimate business enterprise has been held down. We've talked about the harms caused by this policy, and it doesn't work. 2/3 of teenagers say that they can easily or very easily get access to cannabis, so prohibition isn't stopping youth from getting it. If you talk to law enforcement, there is no ability to enforce cannabis laws to actually prevent it from reaching people, so that prohibition model doesn't work. And the harm that we're creating in using a criminal justice system that is already overextended and overtaxed and trying to address serious crimes is also not good for any of our communities. So I look at it as a major failure in public policy. It has its roots in the desire of the Nixon administration to hold back people of color, specifically African Americans, and to target them and demonize them. So it's born out of deep injustice. It has completely failed to keep anybody safe, and it's a policy whose time it's come to go away and be replaced by something better.
Anybody else with questions? You got a question? No? Okay. We love Ryan Winkler over here. Dave.
Some of the loopholes on legalization that I see. Could you ask a little bit more detail?
I think the hurdles. What are the hurdles to legalization?
Well, the biggest hurdle to legalization is that we don't have a pro-legalization majority in the Minnesota House and the Minnesota Senate. So most states that have legalized cannabis have done it with the voters weighing in directly. They have initiative or referendum process where if enough signatures go on a ballot, then the voters have a right to vote on an issue and decide. So that's how California and Colorado and Oregon and a lot of states have started. South Dakota got started down that road before their elected officials basically deep-sixed it. So we don't have that process in Minnesota. We don't have a direct democracy, voter-initiated referendum process. The only way to get a ballot question in front of the voters in Minnesota is if a majority in the House and a majority in the Senate vote to give it to the voters. So you need to have a pro-legalization majority in the House and the Senate in order to create any kind of legalized system. Right now, that has been led by the DFL. As a DFL majority leader, we have made cannabis legalization a top priority and put it front and center. We have had some Republicans get on board, and there is definitely some Republican support for legalization, but they are not going to carry the ball forward on this. They're not going to be the leaders who are making this happen. Some of them will go along with it. So the biggest hurdle to the kind of policy that will actually serve Minnesotans, allow responsible adults to make good decisions, is a majority in the House and Senate that supports it. Right now, that is only Democrats. That may change, but right now it is only Democrats who can deliver that, and that is the number one barrier.
Jim, where are the two gubernatorial candidates on legalization?
Well, Governor Walz has said from the very beginning in his first campaign that he supports legalization of cannabis. And when we were developing House File 600, we worked very closely with all of his state agencies to develop policies that would be something that could be enforced. We were working with them to make sure that regulations, the ability to fit this new regulatory cannabis issue into existing state agencies would work. We listened to public safety, we listened to public health, we listened to the whole administration on the best way to legalize, and that was all under the direction and support of Governor Walz. I have not paid too close attention to Senator Jensen, but I believe he is an opponent of legalization at this point in time, although he has taken every position on every issue over the years. He's been pro-choice and pro-life. He's probably been pro-legalization, and now he's probably running against it. He's done all kinds of stuff. So where he is on any given issue, I think, is an unknown.
Stephanie? How can cannabis legalization supporters help us get to legalization?
The number one way for legalization supporters to actually help Minnesota legalize cannabis is to vote for candidates for the state legislature who support legalization. And you can do a little bit of research. Most candidates are willing to answer that question or have put out information on their website, or MNisReady can help identify who those candidates are. But voting for candidates who support legalization is the only way that we are going to achieve this, because it has to be through the state legislature ultimately to make it work. Now, voting is important, but voting is not the only thing you need to do. So if you get involved and you are aware of where candidates stand on legalization, you want to encourage people that you know in your personal circle to pay attention who they're voting for and where they stand on this issue. If you are talking to your friends, your family, your colleagues, your neighbors, people you know in your life, and are telling them why this vote matters for cannabis legalization, which candidate to vote for, and what the outcome can be from those votes, and you are reaching people in your circles, they are going to trust you much more than they're going to trust a piece of mail they get in their mailbox. They're going to trust you more than a digital ad or an email. And so your voice in advocating for legalization and helping your friends know how to vote in order to achieve legalization is the very best thing that anybody can do to advance this cause.
I want to addendum that. As the coalition director organizing people and voters, we have a really simple way for everybody to stay in the loop on this issue. Stephanie over there has some cards. The card has a QR code on it. If you scan the QR code, you click pledge to vote, and you put in your information. If you do that here today, you get a free button from Stephanie. And then you share that with your friends. And check out the voter's guide. Look at where your candidates stand. If there's no information available, tell your candidates to answer the MNisReady questionnaire. We would like to know where these candidates stand on this issue as we head toward November. And I'll also add, we don't turn away volunteers. There's a volunteer tab on the website as well. And we would love to have you guys come out, help Stephanie promote us, do stuff like that.
Could I just jump in and say one thing? A lot of the people who care a lot about cannabis legalization as an issue tend to be younger, and they are far less likely to vote at all. And if you look at who shows up to vote in elections, it is overwhelmingly skewed towards middle-aged and older voters. Younger voters tend not to show up and vote at all. So if you can help a younger person who does not vote to show up and work on this issue by just voting at all, you will be making a big jump forward. Especially in a midterm election year like this, where there's no presidential candidates on the ballot, that kind of generates all this energy and buzz around voting. This is the kind of election where you getting a few people who care about legalization to show up and vote can make a big difference, especially in a state legislative race. And remember, without state legislators supporting legalization, without pro-legalization majorities in the House and the Senate, there will be no legalization of cannabis, ever.
Woo! I feel like that deserves like a massive round of applause. Thank you.
Massive.
Thank you. Massive. So, Representative Winkler, I want to thank you for being here today, talking with us. If any of y'all are sticking around at the fair, we'll have Senator Erin Murphy at 4 o'clock or around there, depending on the rain situation. And then following Senator Murphy, we'll have some of the leaders from MNisReady giving some more details on our campaign and how you can get involved. So thank you all for coming out today. It was a pleasure to see you. Any closing remarks?
Vote, get your friends to vote, and tell them why voting for state legislators is the only way you will ever have legalized cannabis in Minnesota.